Good morning, cheerleader of love here. Are you sure that the things that are inconsistent that bother you about others, it's not you? What I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. Some people are extremely bothered by, let's say, people who don't show up on time or make a plan and they don't start their event on time. Are you a person who shows up late yourself? Doesn't like people to show up late to things you organize? Because sometimes the inconsistency that we see in others is in us. And we forget to check ourselves and say, is the same thing that I'm bothered by, that I'm annoyed by, am I also guilty of that thing? We don't really think about that a lot because we can easily see the inconsistency of someone else, of something else. But are you that? If you've ever, typically when you start talking to someone new and you get to know them and you start engaging in conversation about maybe your past, your friendships, whatever, and you begin to say, maybe this didn't work out because of this reason, or that didn't work out because of that reason. You have to listen to what people say and what they don't say. Because sometimes the very thing that people are saying to you they're bothered by someone else is the very thing they are. I remember I had a conversation with a guy, and he always talked about how he doesn't like one-sided conversations. He didn't like people who basically kind of want to do all the talking but never really want to hear what the other person is thinking, or never want to hear about the other person to get to know them. And it was funny because I knew this about the person prior to the first time I had a conversation with them. And I remember thinking in my head during the conversation, oh, so the very thing that you don't like is the very thing you are. And in my head, I was kind of laughing in my head. But I remember thinking, and I remember saying to myself, well, I know this will be the last conversation I have with this person. Because the very thing that they complained that they didn't like in other people, they couldn't see that they were that. They couldn't see that in a conversation, they were okay with the conversation being about them, talking about them, all about them. But they couldn't see that that was who they were. They couldn't see that. Is the thing that you get bothered by about others something that's in you and you just can't see it? I know someone who, oh my gosh, they just talk. Like you go to them and you may just be trying to have very small, short conversation, something simple, asking a question, a business question. And people typically know when they engage in a conversation with this person, they already know she's going to talk. And it was kind of a joke to where, there's actually two people that do this. One of them, it was kind of a joke to where, well, actually both of them, now that I think about it, we would literally try to help pull another person out of the conversation because they didn't want to be rude. And I remember thinking one day to myself, do we do that and we don't recognize that we do it ourselves? Do we engage in conversations and kind of start talking, but we hate when other people do it? So I've found myself, and it's only one other person that I can actively say I know with an assurance does what I do. But I found myself, when I'm annoyed with certain things, certain patterns of people, I found myself actually saying, God, show me if this pattern that bothers me is a pattern that I have. Now, there's obviously some patterns that you don't have. I get annoyed with people that exaggerate, because to me, you're lying. You're a liar. And most people who exaggerate are people who don't see themselves as liars, but hate liars. And I get annoyed with people that exaggerate. For example, don't say to me, I'm pulling up to your house and you just not coming through a tunnel, across a bridge. You're not pulling up at my house. So I am, that's probably one of my great annoyances. Don't say it. Don't. It's unnecessary to exaggerate. I mean, I know some people exaggerate a little bit. I get it. I can't say I've never exaggerated, but it bothers me that people exaggerate. Now think about what I just said though. It bothers me that people exaggerate. But I also just sat here and said, I can't say I've never exaggerated. It's why I'm saying to you, sometimes you really need to ask yourself, is the very thing that frustrates me about someone else, am I guilty of it? So I was saying to you earlier that there's only one other person I know with an assurance who does what I do. Both of us are people who will say, why did this bother me? Why did I need to do this? We are the kind of people who will ask ourselves, am I guilty of the very thing I'm frustrated by? But I don't know. I can't recall really having a conversation with anyone else but her who really does that, who says, and let me check myself. Am I guilty of what I don't like? Most of us, we don't really do that. Normally someone else has to tell us that we're guilty of that. Normally someone else has to tell us, well, you know, you're guilty of always playing the victim or being, you know, the woe is me. But yet you can see when other people do it. We have a hard time checking ourselves of the very thing that we say others are inconsistent with. I encourage you, not just today, but honestly for the rest of your life, begin to check yourself and say to yourself, this thing that annoys me about someone else, am I guilty in any way of that very thing? Yeah, I took a long pause for a reason. Are you guilty of the very thing that you're annoyed or bothered by that someone else does? Now, you may not be guilty of it, but what I want you to do is I want you to make it a habit of checking yourself to see where you really are and who you really are. Because again, most of us will say, I'm not a liar, I don't lie. But do you exaggerate all the time? Because if you always exaggerate, guess what? You're a liar. It's harsh, but you are. Most of us will say, I don't play the victim. I don't have a woe is me spirit. I don't walk around with a woe is me attitude. You know, I don't play the victim. But other people would say you do. Check yourself. Begin to ask yourself if the very thing that bothers you about others, you're guilty of. This is your Leader of Love. Visit me on my Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube page at Leader of Love, LUHB. Y'all already know how it goes. I think some of y'all probably say it with me, or maybe say it later. And everything that you do and everyone that you encounter, make a decision to lead with love. Love matters. Have an amazing Monday.